So hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Lucinda Drayton, as Lynn said. I'm a counsellor, I'm a musician. I've been on the journey of self-development and self-awareness since I was 19 or 20, when I started with hypnotherapy and gave up smoking in one session, which was a great experience. And that really got me going on this whole idea of who are we? How can we become fulfilled in our lives? How can we thrive and not just survive? And I've been on that journey ever since, really. And I'm fascinated by human consciousness and human well-being. And as a counsellor, I'm constantly working with people who are struggling, obviously, with all kinds of issues, with anxiety, with depression, with trauma, past traumas. So it's a fascinating world I'm in. I'm very grateful to be part of that world. And I'm constantly having to look at myself and keep growing so that I can be the best for my clients. So that's my background. That's why I found myself here. And I was thinking about today and what would I speak about today? And so many different subjects came up for me, but I fixed on this idea of fear, because I'm certainly seeing it around me a lot during this time. I think a lot of people are living with a lot of fear. I think the media is certainly peddling a lot of stories of fear, and if you're tapped into that, then that can't help but go in the imagery that we're seeing, the stories that we're seeing and hearing. And I know with a lot of my clients, there's an increased anxiety, there's an increased depression, increased stress. How am I going to pay my bills? Will my business survive? How am I going to get through this? And then for people who are on their own and isolated, there's a kind of an inherent stress of aloneness, no one to share with, and all of that. So I just wanted to talk about fear and how important it is at this time, not just to wash our hands, but to wash our minds and our brains, and almost immunize ourselves against this fear response and this gathering energy of fear that is around. So the reason it's so important is that when we feel fear, what happens physically is that we engage, or we wake up, our sympathetic nervous system. And our sympathetic nervous system is all about the fight, flight, or freeze response. So we start to release into our system adrenaline, cortisol, and adrenochrome, which are the stress hormones. So these are useful when you're in a very scary situation, like if you're being attacked by a bear and you had to run like crazy. These hormones would be very useful. They would be great in that situation, but they're not designed to hang around in our bodies over a long period of time. And what they do is they suppress our immune system, because you don't need everything to be working optimally if you need to be running. So the body, very cleverly, the miracle that the body is, shuts down certain parts in order that we can just access what we need to at that moment, which is to run or to freeze or to fight. So when you feel an underlying anxiety over a long period of time, you are literally poisoning your system with these stress hormones, and they wear us out in a way. So if you live in stress over a long period of time, your ability to fight any kind of virus, whether it's a cold or flu, whatever it is, goes down. So we need to find ways to lower these stress hormones and deal with fear. So how do we deal with fear? Well, one of the things I was thinking about was, in our society, in our culture, we are taught to run away from anything that frightens us. We're taught to avoid, distract, and just basically turn away from anything that's uncomfortable. And I often say to my clients who live with a lot of anxiety, the more you change your behavior to cope with the anxiety, the smaller and smaller your world can become. So if I feel anxious about, for example, driving on a motorway, and then I stop driving on a motorway and I can now only drive on A roads, my world becomes smaller. And then if A roads get too scary, I can then only drive on B roads, until I find myself, like many older people, my parents included, living in a sort of 3-mile radius of what feels safe. So we can shrink our worlds to accommodate this feeling of anxiety, when actually the way to deal with this is to sit quietly, to face it, to be able to be brave enough, and this does take a bit of courage, brave enough to sit with fear, to sit with anxiety, to sit with that horrible feeling of stress that we can sometimes arise for no apparent reason, especially at the moment. I don't know if you ever wake up in the mornings and you just feel this kind of dread or uncomfortableness in your chest and in your gut, and it's really not a very nice feeling. And so what do most of us do? Well, we eat something, or we move away, or we put a bit of Netflix on, or we go for a walk. And I'm not saying those are bad things, but then we never get to the underlying issue, which is, what is this really about? And I'll give you an example from my own experience. Just before I was coming online, I just sat quietly for a while, as I usually do before I speak or share anything, and I was just tuning into my own body, and the slight feelings of fear of, oh, you know, will I be good enough? Will it be good enough? Have I got enough to say? Is it deep enough? Is it too much? You know, all of those, and then they're quiet in me now because I know them well. I've sat with them for many years, and they don't derail me anymore. They wouldn't stop me doing anything. And I just sit quietly with them and I say, you know, it's okay. It's okay. You do what you do, and how it's received is really not any of your business. So I speak to myself in this way. I talk to myself. But the first thing is I have to tune into that. So I have to stop and be willing to sit with these very uncomfortable feelings of, like, you know, and of course, if you haven't worked with them before, when you start to listen to them, they may be an actual terror or a panic inside you, which is very, very uncomfortable to sit with. Especially, I know a lot of people are experiencing a kind of low-level panic about getting the virus at the moment, which of course is real. You know, it's a real thing. Nobody's saying that it's not real. But the fear you're living with every single day, you're carrying with you, and you do have a choice about that. You do have a choice to do something about that fear, about that anxiety, or low-level frustration, whatever you want to call it. It's literally poisoning your system and undermining you and inviting you to shrink your life. Whereas I believe the response that's needed at this time, this particular time, maybe all the time, but certainly at this time, when we're all being challenged, is actually, no, I will build myself up. I will strengthen myself internally. I will become strong. I will become powerful. I will become whole and healed and able to face what's coming, and to know that I have the inner resources to deal with what's coming, whatever it might be, because none of us can control what's going on out there, and it's pretty chaotic. But we can make choices about what goes on here in my mind, in my heart, in my body. So that's my first sort of exploration of fear, what it does to you, how important it is to not run away from it, to listen to it, to acknowledge it's there. I'm scared, you know, it's a really powerful thing, to just notice and go, wow, I'm feeling afraid here. I feel uncomfortable. I feel unsafe. A lot of my clients say, I don't feel safe in the world. I don't feel safe. So first thing is to acknowledge that, to name it, to give it a name. I feel uncomfortable, I feel unsafe, I feel less than, whatever it is that's going on in you. And to gently own that, to gently say, but this is mine. You know, yes, there's stuff going on out there, but I still have a choice about how I respond, about how I work with that, about how I work with myself. So what are the responses to this? What can we do to change our responses, to help ourselves navigate this time and any time of challenge? And it could be any time. It doesn't have to just be about COVID-19, although I think it's really brought into perspective at the moment, and certainly making us all look a bit deeper, the people who want to work with this. So the first thing really is that we've got to try and re-engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which is not about the stress hormones. It's about the rest and the digest. It's about the calming down. And the wonderful hormones that we want to try and release instead of those stress hormones, which get our body all ready to fight or fly, are the serotonin, the dopamine, and the oxytocin, the happy hormones, the calming hormones. And one way you can do this is through meditation, through introspective practices, through deep relaxation, through calming thoughts, through walking quietly in nature and becoming mindful about what's around you, so that you're not allowing your mind to churn out the anxious, repetitive, fast, destructive thoughts, but you're saying, oh, hang on a minute, hang on a minute. Let's just come back. Let's just come back. I, the being, the master of this internal world, can decide to change the vibration of this world inside me, the landscape of this world inside me. And a very simple way to do it is to think of somebody you love. Do that now. Just maybe close your eyes for a few moments and picture someone you love. See their face. If you can't think of a person, maybe it's an animal. Just something that, someone or some being that you love with your heart. See their face. Think about them. And you might start to feel that kind of warm feeling inside of those wonderful feelings of love. What you bring to my life. And now allow those feelings to magnify. This person that I love, that I really care about, and I'm so grateful for. And then spread that vibration, those feelings, out into the world, or perhaps direct them at somebody that you know is struggling at the moment. So this wonderful loving kindness, this feeling I have, I now share with you. I share with you. I surround you with it. And I'm thinking of a friend of mine who's very sick at the moment. I pass this wonderful loving feeling on to you. So just take a deep breath and open your eyes. Just a few minutes. And I don't know if you feel different. I know I do. And I used to meditate a lot with a heart rate monitor on, just because I was interested into what happens. And my heart rate used to go down to the 40s when I meditated. So your heart rate drops. Your breath starts to calm down. And you engage these wonderful feelings of these happy hormones, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. It also happens when you watch acts of kindness. So if you're going to flick through YouTube in a distracting way, why not flick to acts of kindness and watch people be kind to other people? This also releases dopamine. In the same way, if you are a little bit stressed, a little bit anxious, it's not a good idea to watch scary, stressful films. So what I'm placing in is going to have an effect on my inner kingdom. If you think about this as a kingdom, that's quite an interesting way to think about it. So what am I going to bring into my kingdom? What kind of people, what kind of images, what kind of thoughts, what kind of feelings do I want in my kingdom? And that's up to you. Nobody else can do this for you. If you are an anxious thinker and your thoughts get caught in a loop and you go round and round and round and round, that loop that takes you down into fear and into anxiety, it is your responsibility to loop the other way, to find some kind of thought that you can hang on to, or a loving kindness meditation like this, that every time that thought comes, you loop the other way. No, I am resourceful. So for example, let's take the thought of, I can't make enough money, I can't survive. And that's looping and looping and looping. So your job now is to I am abundant. I am resourceful. Whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. I will find a way to make this work. I am powerful. I am resourceful. I draw to me that which I need. And you get obsessed with those kind of thoughts. This is up to you. This is up to you. Nobody else can do this for you. But believe me, it works. I've seen people's life change around just through the practice of this kind of thinking, this new kind of thinking. So there's also the responsibility of what I do with my body. Now, I work for a company or an organisation. They're not really a company, they're a gathering of amazing people called Reach in the Midlands, and they're a gathering of counsellors and psychotherapists, and they're all about human health and well-being, and I'll give you their website at the end of the talk, because their resources are free and there's an online library, so you can just help yourself. And the model that we work with primarily is called the story of health. How do we become healthy? Now, we've already talked about what we can do with our minds and what we can do with our vibration. But we do have a body. We live in a body. So what are you doing to help your body help you? And this will seem a bit obvious. And you might think, well, I've heard all this before. I know this. I know this. But you have to ask yourself the question, am I doing it? And if you're not doing it yet, then you don't know it. Hydration is the first thing. Have you got water with you now? Do you drink water? I've got a bit of lemon in mine so that I alkalize at the same time. It seems like a simple thing, but I think a 1 to 2% drop in the water content of your body has quite severe effects on your ability, your cognitive abilities. So your thinking becomes impaired when your water drops in your body. And there's a lot of research you can read on this. Did you know that strenuous exercise actually renews brain cells? I didn't know that till fairly recently, because there used to be the idea that we can't create neurons, that once they die, they die. But in fact, the new research shows that that's not true. And one of the ways of generating new neurons, so keeping your brain healthy and alive, especially in the area of memory, is linked to strenuous exercise, which means getting your cardiovascular, getting it going, breathing deeply, running, or cycling or swimming, but getting going. Now you might say, well, how's that related to fear? But if I know that my body is strong and well, everything else starts to work better. My thinking changes, how I feel changes, my self-respect changes, because I think, yeah, I've been out today, I did a bit of exercise, I feel good about myself. These all help with stress, with depression, with anxiety. So don't underestimate the real simple stuff: hydration, strenuous exercise. And then food, of course. Food and mood. It's a good idea to Google food and mood. You'll find some amazing links between the kinds of foods you eat and how that affects your mood. So one of the first things one of my colleagues used to say to depressives is, you have to get sugar sorted out. You have to give up refined sugar because it has such a huge effect on your mood swings, ups and downs. So to bring balance in my body and balance in my thinking and my life and my way of being, I need to also think about balance in my diet. And one of the easiest ways to do this is just think of a rainbow diet. Get as many colours on your plate as you can and ditch the packaged foods because they're just so full of stuff that is not good for us. Which is very simple. Up your protein. Pay attention to your gut. Your gut and your brain are very, very linked. If you think about intuition, your gut feeling, there's now a lot of research that's linking gut and brain. So your digestion, all of that sort of thing. Think about all of these things. And of course, sleep is really important. It's really important to get deep, restorative sleep so your body can repair itself. It can rest, it can do all its housekeeping, get rid of all the waste cells, of which there are a lot generated in the day just from breathing and talking and walking. So it has a lot of work to do. And I, as the master of my inner kingdom, need to look after that kingdom, which means I need to make sure I get sleep. And there's many, many different kinds of herbal remedies you can take. There's ways to wind down. It's not a good idea to take your laptop to bed with you. The old remedies of, hot milk and nutmeg and reading and all of those kinds of things can help. Obviously, sleep could be a whole course because I know some people really struggle with sleep. I often recommend Passiflora to my clients. So it's a flower remedy, it's a liquid flower remedy. It's a very mild tranquilizer, and that can really help with a lot of people, but it depends on your body type. So all of these things may seem really obvious, but I never really apologize for speaking about them again, because if you're not doing them, you haven't really got it. And I talk to myself in the same way. If you're not doing it, you're not living it, you haven't really understood how important this is to create stability in my kingdom, in all areas, even my environment. How is your environment? When did you last declutter? Do you clean regularly? Do you walk into a room and think, oh, I love this room, I love this room? Because that's going to lift your spirit. It's going to lift your spirit. And when your spirit is lifted, it affects your mind, it affects your body. When your body's taken care of, it affects your mind, it affects your spirit. It's all intrinsically linked. So anything you can do in any area is going to have an effect on the whole. And it's going to help you deal with your fears, with your anxieties, with your depression, with your flat mood, with your tiredness, because those are the things I'm hearing that a lot of people are struggling with. So once you've looked at fear and you've said, yes, there is fear there, there is anxiety there, and you've taken some kind of responsibility for it, and you've started to do some things to try and help yourself, there's also another level at which I can melt fear or become less afraid of fear itself, because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. It's not the actual thing out there, it's the fear that is generated inside that scares me. And then I do all these various things that I do to shut that down. I avoid, I distract, I procrastinate, I eat, whatever it is. But if I can sit quietly and become aware of it and really take responsibility for it, then I'm moving towards acceptance. And acceptance is where peace is found. And I don't know anybody who doesn't enjoy peace in their life. As one of my teachers used to say, if you want to be happy, become peaceful. Peace is the foundation for everything else. So when I can accept, oh wow, I feel really anxious today. And then I have no story about that. I have no need to run away from it. I sit quietly with it. I allow it to say what it needs to say. Well, I need to get this done, and I've got this list, and I haven't done this, and I need to walk the dog, and then I've got this to do, and then I've got that to do, and the children, and the list that we've all got, and the anxiety that builds from that. Something I've been experimenting with recently is just going, and I accept your right to be here, and breathe. And it's almost like when that feeling is fully heard and honoured, it just melts. So that's another way to look at fear and anxiety or anything you're struggling with. Even because we were talking a bit earlier about what was going on in the world, and Lynn mentioned isolation. People are feeling isolated. Even loneliness can be met in this way. Deep loneliness. If I can sit quietly with myself and just, I'm lonely, and sit quietly with it, with compassion, to become my own compassionate friend who says, yeah, I hear you, I'm sorry, and I hear you, and I'm with you. It's like I become my own companion. Now, I'm not saying that this, doesn't mean you won't miss your family and you won't miss contact. I think we're all doing that. I miss my family. But there's something about meeting your own loneliness that is very, very empowering, very gentle, very loving. So that's something as well. If you're brave enough, if you really want to investigate what's going on inside you and take responsibility rather than be bashed about on the waves of what's going on in the world. Meeting your own loneliness is part of that journey, and accepting it, accepting deep acceptance of what is. I just want to read you this quote. Acceptance is about freeing the mind from inner conflict, self-destructive patterns, and enslaving views of ourselves and the world. Acceptance is about freeing the mind from inner conflict, self-destructive patterns, and enslaving views of ourselves and the world. Because that's real freedom, when I no longer fight with myself, when I become my own ally, when I stand in my own corner and I champion myself. That's real freedom. So I can be afraid. I'm not saying fear is going to suddenly stop, or anxiety is going to suddenly stop. I was feeling it just before I came online. But I no longer turn away from it. I no longer feel afraid of it. I no longer allow it to dictate to me what I'm going to do. I'm like, okay, here you are. Hello. I often use the image of the well, going down the well of depression, or the well of anxiety, or getting caught in a story and spiraling down to the bottom of the well. And I think what happens as you go along this road and you start to work with yourself and you work on your stuff, you learn to sit at the bottom of the well quite comfortably and go, oh, here I am again. And you can have tea down there. You can just sit quietly and go, oh, here we are. Okay. I'm afraid. And that's okay. I'm afraid, and it's okay. I'll sit here with you in the well of fear, in the well of anxiety, and it's okay. I accept you. And through this deep acceptance, this loving what is, if you like Byron Katie's work, there's a space where freedom becomes possible. Freedom to move into something new. And that's a wonderful feeling. Freedom to choose a different pattern. Freedom to step out of an old pattern. You know, that moment when you've done enough work on yourself, when you're in an argument with your partner and you suddenly decide, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to get caught by my usual hooks. And you just go, okay, I'm sorry. And you feel the pain inside. You're working like crazy on the inside, choosing a new way, but you're like doing it consciously. This is what it's like to be awake. This is what it's like to say, I make the choices. So when fear comes, when anxiety comes, there's a moment of space where you go, okay, this has come again. It's not a problem. It's okay for you to come. We can talk, we can chat, we can have tea, but it's not how I'm going to live my life. I am my greatest resource. I am resourceful. So I'd like to just sort of finish off with a meditation, which is a beautiful meditation where I speak to my own fear. So it's called Dearest Fear, and I've included it in a link so that you can carry on doing it after today with images and music. It's very beautiful. And it's about making fear your friend. So seeing that fear never really came to hurt you, it came to free you. And this way we hold hands with fear and we go forward. So fear never stops us doing anything again. It never limits us. It never keeps us small. It doesn't control our lives. It becomes a friend. So sit back, make yourselves comfortable. And this is called Dearest Fear. So just breathe in. As you breathe out, let your body relax. Let your eyes gently close if that feels comfortable. Become aware of your inner world. Dearest fear. I have only just come to understand that you actually exist to protect me. You are not my enemy at all. When you first turned up in my life, it was in fact to warn me, to protect me, and to encourage me to move away from that which would cause me harm. Over the years, I've come to misinterpret and misunderstand your reasons for being in my life. So much so that I've made you into an enemy. It is slowly dawning on me what a terrible mistake I've made. I've misunderstood you, and as a consequence, demonized you. By not understanding your role as my protector, I've come to see and experience your warnings as terrifying things to avoid. So not only have I avoided any situation where you have turned up to warn and protect me, I've also become so afraid of your signs that your acts of friendship have been completely overlooked. I am so sorry. Now, for the first time, I realize you do not exist to harm me. You're my protector. You're my friend. And because there has been no dialogue between us over so many years, you now simply fight for your survival. You are afraid that I seek to extinguish you from my life, which has indeed been the case. You are like everything that lives. You are simply fighting for your survival. This is why we have been on opposing sides for so long. How sad. I have turned you into my enemy. No wonder you fear my intentions. All you experience from me is that I want to be rid of you. No wonder you fight so hard for your place in my life. You cannot understand why, when you only seek to protect me, that I fight so hard to be rid of you. For the first time, I understand it from your point of view. Can we start again? Can we let the ignorance on both sides fall away as we come to understand the truth about our relationship? From today, I will see you for who you really are and start giving thanks for the importance of your friendship. I hope over time that you will come to trust that I do not want to extinguish you from my life. That was a response born of interpreting you as a negative force in my life. I now realize you really are not, and I want us to grow together with a new understanding. I want you to continue to protect me and look out for me, but for that to take place in ways that are more healthy and constructive. I realize it's only because I fought you that you have turned up in more fearsome forms in an attempt to grab my attention, to force me to look at what I continue to avoid. And now I realize I need to thank you for that. I also need you to give me another chance. I know it may take time for us to build a bond of trust, but I want to do that. And I know it's what you want too. It's what you've always wanted. There is no value in continuing as opposing forces. So much time and energy has been wasted in this for so long. Dearest fear, let's walk into the future together as allies and leave the illusions that have blighted our relationship behind. Thank you for all that you've done for me. Please forgive me for not understanding the real role you have tried to play in my life. Now I can see you clearly, and I want us to be friends. So gently open your eyes. So I know this is quite a radical approach for some of you. To actually see fear as a friend might be a completely new concept. But this is all about accepting, embracing, allowing, not going to war anymore with myself. So this brings peace and acceptance and freedom. So do keep trying with it, even if it feels alien at first, because I know it works. So I'd just like to say a big thank you for being here with me. I will be coming back at some point, working with Lynn and Seed. So I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Good luck as you go forward working with this and working with yourself. Up your self-care, look after yourself, pay attention to each area of your life. It really does pay dividends. And I'd like to leave you with a song that I wrote during lockdown, which was inspired by many of the things I've learned, but also by reading and listening to Ram Dass, who is a wonderful spiritual teacher, who talks about the talks about life in a very deep way, and about aging and conscious aging, and about the process of leaving and living life awake so that we don't have regrets at the end. So we live life fully. So it's called A Life of No Regret. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have a life of no regret. Even in this, we can choose that. So I wish you well. I wish you much love. If you're interested in the music I make, do go to my website, lucindadrayton.com, and there's also details there on my counselling one-to-one work. So wishing you well, wishing you much love. Goodbye for now. Thank you.